Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is where I ask you to hit the bell, like, and sub. But what you didn't know is I have a Discord and we stream on Twitch where we talk and do things music and production. All the links are in the description down there. So we've heard this topic before. Backtracks. Cool, not cool, bad, good. We've seen some recent things clearly, and we got Ronnie Radke right here on the front cover. So we've heard him talking about Backtracks. I think he got his laptop stolen. Some people hated on that. Some people went and defended that. I mean, first, it goes without saying, everything's a case-by-case basis. So if we want to argue the facts, it'd have to be on specific topics, not a general basis, because things work differently for all different artists. Bands who have admitted to using backtracks, and then I'll talk a little bit about backtracks. The world of rock music went berserk over a few things in 22, trying to cancel culture was one of them, Ticketmaster. We had some spectacular fireworks over bands who were suspected of using backing tracks when they perform. Bands using backing tracks or pre-recorded pieces of music or vocals to enhance the sound of a live show. Enhance being the preferred term of fans of the practice. Those who despise the use of tracks called doing it authentic and lazy, and plenty of these detractors have very strong feelings about it. The first backing track flap happened in April this year and drew attention of backing track watchdog Eddie Trunk of the Sirius XM Trunk Nation show. I don't know about this or this guy. Backing track watchdog gives me enough. A video of rock band Santa Cruz was floated that showed the lead singer walking away from the mic while his voice still sang in the background. Okay, first and foremost, this can be a perception very easily in many band situations if a singer walks away from the mic, but not necessarily for the exact reason. They're not doing full-blown vocal replacements. Some artists use a doubled track, so they sing a much louder live take, and then they have a doubled version, because this happens in studio. They have the lead and a double. Some artists like to bring that double into the live situation so they can get the extra wet live vocal. If they walk away, you're hearing that little quieter center vocal. Then in June, Kiss was called out after Paul Stanley's pre-recorded vocals were allegedly exposed. I've seen that video. I mean, sometimes it looks obvious, but then when you think about it, you're like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm listening to. In July, video appeared of Motley Crue's drummer, Tommy Lee, who was scrambling to sit at his drum kit while his drums started. That's bad. I'm sorry. Drums should not be backtracked. Drums is the one thing that's supposed to be the most reliable live thing other than the lead vocals, especially with screaming vocals on heavy bands. And in October, the granddaddy of them all, as Falling in Reverse bailed on a show because their laptops with their backing tracks on them went missing. That incident turned into a full-on war, which you can read about below. Are you okay or not okay with bands using backtracks when they play live? Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm has said, I'm not a fan of when I find out my favorite bands do that. Deep Purple's Ian Gillian thinks it's cheating. Megadeth's frontman Dave Mustaine had some choice, colorful words to describe artists to use them. F***ing lazy. Okay, easy. Bands who have admitted to using backing tracks. Here we go. These musicians say backing tracks help them put on the best show they can and have no shame in confessing it. Fair. These bands exist. Shinedown, I recognize those guys. Guitarist of Shinedown, Zach Myers, is adamant that using backtracks is not only widespread amongst most bands, but also efficient. Efficient? Okay, I applaud that. Efficient is a word I have not heard used much when talking about backing tracks, and that is a good word to use. Efficient meaning with all the cogs moving on shows and staying on time and all the million things that can go wrong. This helps alleviate a lot of problems in keeping the show moving. 90% of the bands do it. 90%, and I can safely say that. He also explains why Shinedown uses them. There's a 25-piece orchestra on our song. Second chance, I can't bring a 25-piece orchestra on tour with me. And we're gonna use backing tracks because, yeah, there's some keyboard stuff, and it's not like piano. Everything you see us playing on stage, we're playing. But you know what? Yeah, if there's a shaker on a song that adds element of energy to the song, we're going to put a shaker in there instead of having to pay some dude to play a shaker and tambourine and keyboards and guitars, even breaking it down to a 5-piece string section. We're going to do that. Myers knows that many fans and bands think tracks are blasphemy, and he's annoyed by it. It bothers me that it bothers people. I'm like, why does this bother you? It's the way it is. People have been doing this since the 80s, even earlier. We want the sound to be the best it can be. Could we go up there, just the four of us, and put on the best rock show ever? Of course, but that's not how we want to do it. Imagine if a band like Lorna Shore didn't have backtracks live, or any band with synth orchestration. Oh, totally, yeah. In any sort of metal bands, like, it's even more expected from metal bands. You know, don't know if it's just me. It feels like one of those discussions. Who the cares? If you don't like it, okay. If you like it, okay. Not directed at you for taking it up. More discussion being going on for years. Well, it came out a couple of days ago, and I haven't been able to throw my opinions on this because I have a very unique perspective on this. I am both a musician, a producer, and a front of house engineer. 3 things. I've had the perspective of using backing tracks or creating them in all of these situations. Now, I know we've seen some people like Nick, some people like Finn talking about this. I've even seen Tank talk about this. Now, Tank would have a lot more exposure to backing tracks being a tech on tour. He's got to put this stuff up. I think that there is a place for backing tracks. I do think that flat out replacing someone who is on stage is a awful, terrible idea. It doesn't matter. I think those are an extreme example of when it's just bad. We're just talking about sad cash grabs by people who are incapable of playing, old and young. Just stop, But anything else, we do have pretty good list of reasons why backing tracks are useful. Not even just for sound reasons. Well, I'll get to that. So moving down first. Motley Crue. Speaking of bands that have been using pre-recorded stuff in live shows since the 80s, we present Motley Crue. Band leader Nikki Sixx tweeted in 19, "We've used technology since 87, been using sequencers, subtones, background vocal tracks, plus background singers, and us. Motley Crue also pre-recorded stuff we can't tour with, like cello parts and ballads. We love it and don't hide it. It's a great tool to fill out our sound." As longtime guitarist Mickey Mars, who recently announced he's retiring from touring, has also admitted that the Crue using backing vocal tracks, but he told Eddie Trunk's Hair Nation show that he was conflicted about it. "I don't like it. I think a band like ours, I have to say 60s bands were my favorite, 60s and 70s bands, because they were real, like 3-piece bands and 4-piece bands. This is why a lot of the bands you hear about these days aren't always as good as you think they are, because back then the bands you heard were only bands that were good at their instruments. Whether you like the music or not, they were genuinely good vocalists, instrumentalists, and all the above. Today, because we can fix things up, you don't know who's good or not until you see them live, if you ever see them live. It sounded a little bit empty up there, so what? It's the bigness and the rawness and the people that developed and wrote the songs and made them and presented them. To me, that's what I really like. I could put on a Motley CD and play with it all day long. I don't want to do that. I think it would be fair to categorize most people into 2 groups. And go f***ing figure, right? Everything's team sports. So you have a large group of people who like raw and organic and natural musicians and instruments being used and played. That even goes for recordings. I remember working with someone back in an old job I had, and we had this conversation where he heard the crappier the recording, the more he loved it. And it blew my mind because I'm not one of those guys. But that was the moment that I was able to realize that this is weird. Some people, that's what they like and that's what they want. And for me, I don't know what a better version of agree to disagree could be. It's like, I'm not going to hate on this guy because he likes recordings differently than I do. But on the other side of the coin, I'm someone, for example, that likes really big, polished, full-sounding, huge and dynamic productions. You see where I'm going with this? I'm going to be part of the group that's going to like the backing tracks, or at least support the use of backing tracks. Backing tracks is like the antithesis, the villain of anyone that likes something raw, organic, and natural. And there's no right or wrong. These are just 2 freaking different things. That's it. And usually we're seeing an argument between these 2 sides. For what? Like, where is the band rule book? You know what I mean? There isn't one. You can do whatever the hell you want. So it's kind of funny that we get into this gatekeepy conversation about what works and not. Wasp, not very familiar. The singer Black Lawless from Wasp came clean when confronted with the issue of a meet and greet with fans before a show in Florida 2022. When the fans asked if they were getting an authentic rock and roll experience on this tour, Lawless said, "We are using backing tracks." And he gave a lengthy explanation to why. "When we go into a studio," and let me clarify this statement, that's me singing, "but when we go into a studio, we do choruses, we do double, triple, quadruple the vocals. So my feelings were when I listened to the live YouTube recordings of Wasp shows, we weren't doing that. It sounded thin. When we started supplementing it, it sounded better." Of course, that's what happens. Lawless then said that he would want if he paid for a ticket to Wasp concert. If I'm a fan and I'm coming to a show, I want the thing to sound as good as it can. Yes, that's a fair request for a listener. Now, how is the real question. There are other bands, the queens of the world, they cannot duplicate 24 vocals at one time. That's what they do on those records. If you want it to sound like those records, you've got to have some help. Well said. Falling in Reverse. Let's just reread this one for a little update on this. Falling in Reverse had a big backing track stink in 2022. Booked to play a radio station festival in Illinois. They backed out at the last minute, and the reason they gave was that they couldn't play because their laptops went missing. Now, fair. That does sound kind of lame when say we can't play because our laptops are missing. It sounds weak when you word it that way. You could have just said like equipment was stolen. Even that sounds better than laptop was stolen. Like someone stole my backpack. Backing track policeman Eddie Trunk of Serious FM quickly pounced, deriding Falling in Reverse for bailing on their show because they couldn't play their backing tracks from it. This led to Ronnie Radke, the force behind the band, to embark on a tweet storm like no other. The rant that Radke went on to, I do remember this way. He had gold. I was laughing my ass off. The rant that Radke went on to justify of using backing tracks, basic argument, why get an orchestra to go on tour? We want to put on the best show. Sebastian Bach joined the conversation. Dude, Sebastian Bach does not belong in that conversation. He toured my venue one time, and trust me, he's got no clout to speak on this. Let's talk about this for a second. We have Falling in Reverse canceling out an entire show for not having the laptops. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean backing tracks. Okay, we gotta put that out there first. As a producer and a front of house engineer, I have a lot of times in creating backing tracks here for bands, playing backing tracks on stage, and I'm a musician. I've played 2 backing tracks, and I've created backing tracks like as a show, not like just here's the stuff for the song. I mean, like I've created full show run-throughs on the laptop. Now, what that means is I have a session that has multiple tracks that's not just audio. We do have things like our sub drop impacts because we don't have a person who plays that, synths and keys and stuff that we don't have, extra thickening background vocals that we don't have. But what we do also have are tracks that run our light show. That light show will not work if we are not playing to a click. A click is a metronome. If you don't know what that is, that keeps us on time. It's something to help us follow the groove while we're in the excitement and adrenaline of the show. It's like something that we follow so we don't play too fast and make the song unenjoyable. That being said, there is a click track in there as well. Go even further down. Some people have tracks that run MIDI and program changes to our guitar processors like our Axe effects, so they can run channel changes so I don't have to tap dance on a million pedals while I'm trying to enjoy playing my show and putting on a good entertainment, performance, So, yeah, you need many things going on here. There's also time code that you can throw out. Stage cues. If you're putting on a big production, like a big show, like Slipknot or who else, like there's so much going on in your personal life. Like sometimes you don't have the capacity to sit here and memorize every step-for-step move during a show, especially if you're playing more than a 20-minute set like a headliner. So you have stage cues, walk on stage, walk off stage, next song in 5 seconds, stand back, watch out for pyro, watch out for blinders. Like anything that is useful goes on the backtracks because they're placed on the timeline of their song. There are many, many reasons why backtracks are useful. Now, like I said earlier, if you find someone that is standing on stage and the backtrack is replacing what they are there to be doing, that's a problem. I think throwing doubles is definitely an iffy thing for me because, as we heard earlier, if you walk away and you have a double, your double is going to sound like you just are straight up having background vocals happening. And the audience doesn't know technology and the production behind it. They just see voice and no one at mic, and now they're pissed. And you get problems like this. So I think backtracks are incredibly necessary for bands putting on a show. That leads me to my bigger point. What is the intent of the artist and the music that you want to hear on stage? Is this a band that writes songs as a band because they jam in a garage or a room or a rehearsal space or studio and they record songs as such? That is a band I would expect to sound like a band. But if I hear a band like Bring Me the Horizon's albums, I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going out to a show expecting an organic band to be playing. So intent needs to be considered here. No one considers the intent and purpose of the artists being there. Are we here to put on like a band show? Are we here to put on a show? Ice Nine Kills has one of the biggest productions out there that I've seen. There is no way that show is not running off of a laptop. multiple laptops. If you're smart, you'll see the 2 laptops with the little syncing computer in the middle in case one fucking breaks down. So yeah, at least a simple way of looking at it, there's 2 groups, people who like it, people who don't, but there's not a wrong. If you don't like backing tracks, then don't go freaking listen to it. But I don't see the need for sitting here bashing bands down that clearly are putting their backing tracks to use to put on a large, fun experience. You know what I mean? There's not a requirement for bands. There's not a law book for bands. And until there is, shut the fuck up. Let bands do what they want to do. They're going to do it the way they want to do it. There's an oversaturation of bands, as we were talking about earlier. There's something for everyone. There's also one-man band. There's also the one-man band thing, right? Like Nihilus, he just does vocals live. Yeah, so, I mean, if we want to add to it, we're just talking about rock bands and metal bands. But let's talk about other genres for a second. Pop, forget it. It's pure backing track. Hip-hop. Some of these guys straight up play the songs. They just play the songs and just rap over it with the lead vocals in the songs. Some people do what's called TV tracks. TV tracks are like, basically they take only the lead vocal out of the entire song. It's almost like karaoke, but it's called TV tracks. So it's like if a band is going to go perform a song live on TV, like a night show appearance or something, they have TV tracks. Now, some bands won't do that. It's pretty obvious to tell. Back like during Subliminal Verses for Slipknot, go watch them playing Conan, and it's clearly them playing live. How do you know? Because it sounds like shit. Some people use backing tracks. Some people don't. Get over it. As someone mentioned earlier, the fact that we are having these arguments and conversations is quite ridiculous when we're in the age of TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and Instagram. Like give me a break, right? I saw on Twitter one fan criticizing tons of pop singers for being slightly off with their vocals. Yeah, that's bad. That's bad because people just assume that everyone's going to be just as good as their studio tracks. Keep that in mind. Are you in the studio recording right now? Be aware of what you're putting on your recording because that's what your listeners are going to expect. You can't change that. That's what they're going to expect. So if you can't reproduce that live in any way, shape, or fashion, it ain't happening.